Welcome to the Understanding Percents Review. This review is for 6th grade honors students at Renner Middle School, but feel free to watch the video to learn how to solve different types of percent problems. We are going to start at section 1, converting between percents, decimals, and fractions. So we are looking at just the decimal side right now, and then we will move over to the fraction side. So the first thing is when you are converting a decimal to a percent, we have to remember that decimals are just another way to write a fraction. And then we also need to think about that percents are out of 100. So the change of decimal to a percent, it's like multiplying by 100, but we practiced this and we learned that it's the same thing as moving our decimal 2 places when we multiply by 100. So the answer to this first one would be 3 4/10%. The next problem you have is 5 60 hundredths. So it's the same thing. We're going to move our decimal twice. So that would be 560%. Because remember, we talked about a whole would be 1. So 1 represents 100%. Well, we have 5 wholes here. So that's why it's 560%. Next, we have 187 thousandths. Same thing, move the decimal twice. So you would have 18 7/10%. Because if you think of this as a fraction, it's 187 out of 1,000. But to get it to a percent, it has to be out of 100. So dividing by 10 causes this to become 18 7/10. Now we are looking at how can I change a fraction to a percent. And I'm actually going to start with B on this problem. So we have 1/5. So there are different ways that you can change a fraction to a percent. First, I would look at the denominators and determine, so for example, this one is 6, 5, and 16. Determine, can those numbers go equally into 100? 6 cannot, 5 can, so that's why I'm going to start with B. Because 5 can go equally into 100, and to get a whole percent, to change to a percent, it has to be out of 100%. So to get from 5 to 100, we multiply by 20. So 1 times 20 would give me 20 out of 100, which would be a 20%. Okay, on the next question, we have 2 out of 16. 16 also does not go out of 100. So what we can do is we can just divide these problems. So I can think about the numerator goes on the inside. Remember, we talked about how the word numerator starts with the letter N, so it helps us remember it goes on the inside. Or remember that it's 5 divided by 6, so we are dividing 5 by 6, because that is how you also can read fractions. So 6 cannot go into 5, so I'm going to put a 0, bring a decimal, and add a 0, because you can add zeros behind decimals and it doesn't change the value. So 6 can go into 50 8 times, which gives me 48, 2 left over, add a 0, bring it down. 6 can go into 20, oops, not 2, sorry, 3 times, which is 18. Add another 0, and you will notice a pattern will continue. So that tells me that these 3's are repeating. So, but remember, this is a decimal, it is not a percent. So then you are going to have to take your decimal and do the same thing you did on the first side. Move the decimal 2 places. So my actual answer is 83 3/10 repeating percent. Okay, this next one, one thing I noticed in 2/16 is that it could be simplified to 1/8. And so then I can simply divide the 1/8. Well, 8 can't go into 1, so we're going to add our 0 in our decimals. 8 can go into 10 one time. So that gives me 2. Keep adding zeros. 8 can go into 20 2 times, which makes 16. And then 8 can go into 40 5 times exactly. So once again, please remember that this is a decimal, not a percent. So we still need to move our decimal twice. This will give us 12 5/10%. On number 2, you were asked to complete the table to find the fraction, decimal, and percent. Mr. People surveyed 150 students. He asked them to pick their favorite music genre. I know the word about shouldn't be there. He asked them to pick their favorite music genre. His results are listed below. Write each of them as a fraction, decimal, and percent. So 60 out of 150 students picked pop. So as a fraction, that would be 60 out of 150. Or you can write 6 out of 15. And also, you can simplify that down by dividing both of them by 3 and getting 2/5. And so you can think of, to get your decimal, you can say, okay, 2/5, 5 can go into 2, 0 times, but 5 can go into 24. So you have 4/10, or you could have solved it as 2/5 is equal to 4/10 by multiplying and getting 4/10. Okay, and if you think of it this way, 4/10, to make that into out of 100, you would have to do 40 out of 100 to make it equivalent. So that would be 40%. Okay, next we have 45 out of 150. So 45 out of 150, and we could simplify that by 5, which would give me 9 and 30, and that could actually be simplified by 3 again, so that would be 3/10, which gives us the decimal of 3/10, which tells me this is 30%, because once again, you can just move the decimal twice, or you can think of, I have 3/10 to change that to be out of 100, I would times it by 10, which gives me 30 hundredths. Next, we have 15 out of 150, which simplifies. 15 goes into both of them, so you get 1/10. So as a decimal, you have 1/10, which is 10%. And then you have 30 out of 150, so 30 out of 150, and actually 30 can be divided into both of them, so you have 1/5. And once again, you could think 1/5 to make it out of 10 would be times 2, so 1 times 2 is 2/10. So you can think, okay, I have 2/10, which is 20%. And you can check to see if your answer is right by adding these and making sure that so 40 plus 30 is 70, 10 plus 20 is 30 and 70%, plus this 30% makes it the total of 100%, which is what you need for the problem to be correctly converted. Okay, on section 2, you are determining, am I finding the percent, the part, or the whole? So remember, you can set up your ratios as part over whole equals the percent out of 100, or you could create double number lines, whatever makes sense for you. So this first problem says 65 is what percent? So I know I'm looking for percent because that's the question of 400. So 65 is what percent of 400? So we're looking for 65 out of 400. And we are trying to find the percent. We do not know it, but we know the bottom has to be out of 100. So I can see that to go from 400 to 100, I can just divide by 4. So we do the same thing for 65. And I know some people are thinking, oh wait, 4 cannot go into 65. But yes, it can. It just doesn't go in there equally. So 4 goes into 6 one time, which is left 2 left over, bring down the 25. So 4 goes into 25 6 times, which is 24, sorry. You have 1 left over, add a decimal, we cannot leave a remainder. 4 goes into 10 2 times, which gives me 8. With 2 left over, and we're going to add another 0 and bring it down. Gives me 20, and it goes in there. So it wasn't a bad number at all. So this answer right here is 16 and 25/100%. Okay, the next question says, what is 20% of 90? Well, this time I'm looking for the part because they're wanting to know what is 20% of the 90. And of the 90 tells me that's the whole thing. that's out of 100, and this is 20%. So if you think about, I could simplify this to 90 is equal to 2/10. So all I did was divide both of these by 10 to simplify. And now I can see that to get from 10 to 90, I can multiply by 9. So 2 times 9 would give me 18. So the answer would have to be 18. Moving on to number 5, it says 1 apple contains 80 calories. What percent of a 2,000 calorie diet is contained in 1 apple? So I know I'm looking for my percent, so I'm going to go ahead and set up my proportion. I'm looking for the percent. I don't know it, but I know it's at over 100 every time. And I'm looking at the 80 calories of a 2,000 calorie diet. Well, 2,000 calorie diet means for the whole day, so that's a whole amount. So that's 2,000, and the 80 is part of that, because if you eat just an apple, then that's 80 calories, but that's not the only thing you're going to eat for the day. So I can think, how do I get from 2,000 to 100? Well, we divide that by 20. So I can also divide 80 by 20, which will give me 4%. Okay, if you're getting 40%, think about that. 2,000 calories, what's half of 2,000 calories? 1,000. 80 is not even close to being half, so it can't be 40%. Okay, let's try 6 and 7. So it says 33 is 30%. So this might be one of those that you decide to do a double number line. Okay, so I know that I'm going to say it's 10, 20, 30. So 30% is 33. But they want to know of what number. So that would be my 100% is what I'm looking for. What 100%? Well, I cannot go from 30 to 100 evenly. So I'm going to simplify it first. I'm going to figure out what 10% is. So to get from 30% to 10%, you can just divide by 3. So 33 divided by 3 is 11. Now I can go from 10% to 100 by multiplying by 10. And 11 times 10 is 110. So you could have also done this problem as setting it up as your part. 33 is part of the unknown whole that you're trying to find, and it is 30% out of 100. So I would still have to simplify both of these by 10, and I would get the 3/10, and then once again, we can see that this is times 11, and then 110, or 10 times 11 is the 110. So as you can tell, both ways work. You choose which way works for you. So what is 150% of 44? Well, this is over 100%. So I know my answer has to be greater than 44. So I'm going to actually do, once again, I'm going to do a double number line. But I'm going to put my 100% right here. We're going to say this is 150%. And then we're going to bring this down to 50%. So I know 100% is 44 because I'm trying to find the 150. Well, you should be able to see that you can divide by 2 and divide by 2 and get 22 here. And then you can easily just multiply this by 3 to get 150 and multiply 22 times 3 and you get 66. Okay, you could also set this up in your proportion. So in this one, I know 150% over 100, and then it says of 44, so that is my whole amount. You can simplify this down, and I would actually simplify it down to 1 over 1.5, and then you can times this by 44. But I will be honest with you, setting it up as the double number line was a lot easier, and sometimes it's going to be. So, and if you multiply that, you will get the 66 as well. on this one. Section 3, we are looking at your taxes and tips. If your bill at a restaurant is $54 and you want to leave a 20% tip, how much would you pay in total? Well, first we'd figure out what's 20% of the $54. So you can either set this up as a ratio, or you can remember that if you are finding a part, you can multiply. So you can do $54 times the 20%, or remember 20%. So remember 20% is equal to 20 hundredths, which is the same thing as 2/10. So if I multiply this, I get 8 and 10, and I have one decimal. So that is like $10.80. So I would need to add $54 plus your tip, $10.80, will give you your bill of $64.80. The next question said you spent $64 at Academy before sales tax. If the sales tax is 8%, what is your total bill? So you have $64 times your sales tax of 8%. So 8% is equivalent to 8 hundredths. So 8 times 4 is 32. 8 times 6 is 48. Plus the 3 is 51. And then multiplying that is just going to give me zeros. So I can leave it as 512 and not multiply the zeros. Sorry, you don't have to add. You have to go count your decimals, 1, 2. So this gives me $5.12, but that is just your tax. Now it says what is the total bill? So you have to take the $64 and add the $5.12, which will give you $69.12. In section 4, we are looking at percent of increase and decrease. So it says the t-shirt goes on sale for 30% off the original price. If the original price of the t-shirt was $45, what is the new price? So first I have to find 30% of the $45. So I can do 45 times my 30%. So 30% is equivalent to 30 hundredths. And if you want to add the 0, that is completely fine. I'm just going to drop it as a placeholder. And then 3 times 5 is 15. 4 times 3 is 12. Plus that 1 is 13. So you have 2 placeholders, 1, 2. So you need 2 in your answer. But $13.50 is how much it's on sale. So it's off the original price. So we have to do the $45 minus $13.50. So we have to think about that. We'll have 50 cents, and then you have $31.50 is what the new price will be after the discounted price of 30% off. Okay, on question 11, it says an iPhone originally cost $650. Key word there. If you add a contract with AT&T, the phone will cost $390. What is the percent of discount for the iPhone? So if we think about this, first we need to figure out what should we use? What formula should we be using? Well, we're talking about percent of increase and decrease. So that is the amount of change over the original price. And I'm seeing some of you use this formula when it's not a percent of change question. They're not asking for the percent of the discount or the percent of increase or percent of decrease. So first we have to find the 650 minus the 390, and then the original cost was 650. So then if I simplify this, 650 minus 390, so if you need to, go over to the side and work it out. Make sure you're right. Don't just do things in your head. Double check with just working it out real quick. So I have 260 out of 650. Okay, and I could actually simplify that further if I wanted to and say it's 26 out of 65. So we're having to change this fraction to a percent. So I'm going to divide 26 by 65. 65 cannot go into 26. So I'm going to add a 0 and bring a decimal. And then I'm having to think, how many times would 65 actually go into 26? Well, I know that 65 plus 65 is going to give me 130. So if I think about that, 130 plus 130 is actually going to give me the 260 I need. So it goes in there 4 times. Exactly. So I get 4/10, which we know is 40%. Number 12, a pair of sneakers that originally cost $80 is on sale for $56. What is the percent of discount for the sneakers? So, once again, amount change over original. So the change would be 80 minus 56 over the original cost of $80 because it's a discounted price. It's a decrease. So if I subtract that, I get 24, and it's over 80. And if you think about this, you could actually solve this by simplifying, divide this by 4, divide this by 4, which will give me 6 out of 20, which tells me that helps me get to 100 by multiplying by 5 and multiplying by 5, and you get 30 out of 100. So 30 out of 100 would tell me it is 30% discount. A shoe store buys shoes for $45 from a vendor. They sell the shoes in the store for $63. What is the percent of markup? So we are still doing change because the price changed. That's how you can tell that it is a percent of change. There is a difference in the two prices. So it's the change over the original price. So I'm going to have to do the $63 minus 45, and then the original price is $45 because it's a markup. So 63 minus 45 is going to give me 18 out of 45. Well, what I know about 18 over 45 is that 9 can go into both of these, which gives me 2/5. And that means I can now scale up to be out of 100, multiply by 20, and multiply by 20. And that gives me 40 out of 100, which is equivalent to 40%. Okay, and the reason I can keep using equal signs the way I'm using them is because all of these ratios are equivalent to one another. Number 14, a computer software retailer used a markup rate of 40%. Find the that should be probably the sale price of a computer that costs $25. So, cost the retailer. So it's a markup of 40%. So we're going to have to do 25 times 40%. So 40% is equivalent to 40 hundredths. Remember, you can just drop that 0 down if you need to. And then 4 times 5 is 20. 4 times 2 is 8, plus 2 is 10. And we have 2 decimal places, or 2 numbers behind the decimal. So it's $10, but the $10 is how much the markup is. So then we need to do $35 plus $10, which is $45. And the last question tells you to study. You need to understand when you are finding part, the whole, the percent of change, how to change a fraction to a percent, how to change a decimal to a percent. You need to understand all these types of problems and be able to figure out when you are doing which one. So tomorrow we are going to review in class some more, and I will answer any questions that you have. But this review needs to be done before Friday, preferably done by tomorrow. Have a good night, study, and be prepared to ask questions tomorrow morning.